7 people already.
I love it.
Let's keep going. Ba, ba, and comments. I'm gonna show you guys. Welcome everybody to Dave's Island live show, coming to you live virtually from, actually Long Beach, Lakewood, and also Oregon, Portland, Oregon. It's pretty awesome. So welcome you guys. As you saw, there was Dave and our special guest today. We have Miguel Medina, and I'm excited to bring you guys in today for today's show. And without further ado, I don't want to waste any time because this is going to be a great show. I've been listening to these guys all afternoon, and you guys get ready to be excited. So here we go. Here we have Dave and Miguel Medina. Boom.
Hey.
Hey, everybody.
How you
Welcome
doing,
to
Dave?
the DII live show. Miguel Medina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to just talk and have discussions about the handpan and the native flute and how they work together today.
Mm-hmm.
All the people out there in YouTube land can comment now if you have any questions. We've got somebody online that's watching the comments go down. So as we progress through this video today, we can answer some of those questions. So feel free to ask any of those questions and just have at it and enjoy. So Miguel and I, we just played, if you heard it at the very beginning of the show, that was us playing live. And so that was not a recording. And if you enjoyed it, you're going to have a little bit more enjoyment coming forward with this video. We're going to play a couple more times. We've really enjoyed putting this together. And it's really lovely. The two instruments sound great together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So first of all, we're just going to do like a little interview discussion. He's going to ask me questions. I'm going to ask him questions back and forth. If we see any of your questions come in on the comments, feel free. We'll take a look at those also. But just to get started, Miguel, let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
So everybody knows who you are and how we're associated.
Okay. So I'm Miguel Medina. I am an artist. I'm a musician, and my livelihood for it's close to 25 years now, is making these Native American flutes like the one I just played. And, I feel blessed. I have a very fortunate life. I've always been the kind of guy who's was committed to, at a very young age, just doing me, right? And trusting that it would all work out. And along my journeys, I was a craftsperson, an artist, always was that way. And just did little crafty things and vended when I traveled around the country and stuff. And along the way, I stumbled across these flutes, and that's how that journey started. So that's why.
How old do you think you were when you? How old do you think you were when you?
Yeah, I was doing the math today. I think I was like 1996 maybe. So I'm thinking like 22 years old. Yeah, right around there.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. I was about 20-something when I first got into steel drums and tuning steel drums and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time of life. Both of us found our little path right about then.
Yeah, and it was big for me, man. It was well, I think I know we're going to touch on it at some point, but when that Native American flute also was at the same time when I was introduced to Native American ceremonies, specifically at that time, like the sweat lodges. And so those two became like hand in hand, ended up being like a major part of my life. You know what I mean? And I just kept going with it, you know, with the flutes. I mean, at first when I was taught how to make a flute, someone gave me a stick about this long and said, okay, this is where you put the holes, doom, 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 and it'll sound pretty good. And then from there, of course, I had to go down the wormhole of learning how to tune to 440 pitch, learning how to, you know, tune with a tuner, and then basically destroying tons of wood. My friend Patrick, he's been buying flutes for me for 25 years. He was one of my first early on supporters, and yeah, we were joking around the other day. He's like, yeah, they made good kindling, you know. But yeah, you know, because I was trying to make different keys, but I didn't have a recipe. No one gave that to me. I basically learned it trial and error, and, you know, learned, okay, G minor, this many notes, these are the notes in that scale. And then through trial and error, figuring out what bore was the best, what, you know, finger spacing was the best. And I'm still doing that today because I also make the Native American style flute, which is typically a G minor, or I mean a minor scale flute. But now I make them in Arabian and Aeolian tunings, any tuning. I'll try anything. So if someone asks for a tuning I've never made, or in a key that I've never made, I always at least make two, because the first one, the holes might get a little bit strange and a little weird until I figure out the exact hole size and placement that's going to work, you know, for that particular scale, which I'm sure you know a lot about making handpans. You got to find the recipe. Yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about how you learned how to make them, because it reminds me so much of how I was working with steel drums initially when I was in my early 20s. A lot of experimentation, just like you were talking about. It's not like you had a guide, and I didn't really even have a formal mentor at the time. So I just did a lot of messing around.
And then was that the same with the handpans as well, or was it easy to transfer? So when the handpans got popular, you and I have discussed this a little bit. When they got popular, was it a pretty easy transfer for you to learn because you've already had X amount of years in steel drum making?
To some degree, but the handpan had some mysteries about it that were unfamiliar. It wasn't so much the tuning; it was like just the way it was built, the kind of materials that went into it. Some aspects of it were vastly different. Like the handpan has the lowest note in the middle, but the steel drums have the highest notes in the middle. So that was counterintuitive to me. And so there was like weird little stepping stones that I had to take to get to where I am now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, over time with the making of the flutes, and that's how we met, I reached out to you because I discovered these handpans too. And boy, I was going down the wormhole, and I was just doing my research and looking. And actually a friend here locally, this guy Curtis, he learned about you, heard about you, and said, man, you got to try this guy. Have you ever played a Dave's Island instrument? And that's when I reached out to you and started talking with you about that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, in the amount of years that I was making flutes, you know, I never, ever got sick of making flutes. It's such a blessing because flutes are like therapy to me. I kind of joke around sometimes because I do a lot of service work through the Native ceremonies and give a lot of myself in a lot of ways, just helping out. And I think we were talking about that right before we aired on. But flutes are like therapy. Like I would say to people, man, I need a 2-week vacation. I just need 2 weeks of making flutes with no interruptions. And I would be like in heaven, you know what I mean?
Right.
But, you know, the playing actually got a little bit dull after a while, you know, and I mean, I play these same minor keyed flutes day after day after day after day, and mostly just for tuning and going out and performing and things like that. I mean, I took a break from that partly because I was raising children, but also it got a little bit monotonous. I wasn't feeling it as much, but I noticed when I started getting into the handpans and then accompanying the handpans with the flute. It reignited my inspiration for the flute as well. I love the pan by itself, but the flutes over the pan, they just sing in this way that I've never been more excited about the Native American flutes since I've been playing the handpans to accompany them. So
when I got to know you, I got a couple flutes of my own as well. Mm-hmm. And my wife would play and I would play, and it's like we've mentioned it before. I'll probably say it over and over again today, but they're really a match made in heaven. The two instruments.
They really are.
You know, the cool thing about the handpan is it has the combination of the percussion and rhythm along with the melody notes or the harmony notes. Mm-hmm. And the flute doesn't really have the percussion aspect. It just has the melodic aspect. Yes. So the melodic and the percussive, it gives you the rhythm and the melody, and it combines them perfectly.
Yeah, I love that. And the first instrument, like I wasn't a musician growing up. I didn't take music in school or anything. And I've always learned music from ear. You know, I still don't know how to read music. I play by ear. I've always learned, started picking up different instruments as a teenager, like the keyboard and bass guitar just a little bit, and would learn songs based from ear. But the first instrument that I got good at and excelled was hand drums, like djembe specifically, and African drumming. And so I really have this rhythm based to me. You know what I mean? Like whether I'm playing the flute or not, my mind is always hearing the heartbeat or the beat. And so I play rhythmic with a flute, even if I'm playing it solo, you know? Yeah. But that's, again, to bring the handpan in and to have that, because for me, if I'm by myself, I use a looper to play the handpan, lay something down with the handpan usually first, and then do the flute over. And I can layer different things, cajon or didgeridoo, and a little vocals. But the handpan is it's such an awesome foundation, especially for the spiritual music, because it's ethereal. But people can do so much with it. Like you can dance with a handpan. You can, you know what I mean? You can get into some super cool, fast rhythmic grooves, but you can just float away with them too. And I just love that about them. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So at the beginning of the little live show that we've got going on here, we got some comments from some people, and they were asking about scales and how to match a native flute scale to a handpan. And we discussed that a little bit. So let me just preface that with today we're playing on a D minor handpan, and we call this the sunset scale. A lot of people out in handpan land call it Celtic minor. So this is a D minor, essentially handpan. So what you're playing today is mostly a D minor native flute or native flutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's one song we're going to be doing where you're playing A minor.
Yes. And so that's a neat thing. And that's one thing I've thought about because I sell your handpans and things like that as well. And so as far as me, when I'm talking about accompaniment with my customers, D minor is like the best one. However, D minor is not the best beginner flute because of the size of it. And so typically, I mean, I can make a high D minor, but it's not very common for me to do so. It's not one of my like in-stock flutes or ones that I make on a regular basis. I could custom do it all day long. But typically, this is a D minor. This is 28 inches long. The longer they are, the farther the spread. And so it's super ideal for your sunset handpans. However, for the beginner, someone that's like, man, I want to play a flute with a handpan, but I haven't learned the flute yet or whatever, the A is a much better choice. And the A is, the one that I have here is actually one of my least expensive models that I carry, but, all my flutes I try, sound quality is key number one. So you can still get concert quality 440 pitch with the basic flute model, but this is more ideal. So if I was going to try to set someone up who was new to flute, I would probably, recommend the A over the D because of the size. And
Can you
then
give us like
also,
a short little sample of both of those, like the D minor versus the A minor?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the D, again, is the bass. And my customers, especially the beginners, they always talk about, what draws people to the flute is that low, resonant, meditative tone. And so when they hear this, I'm going to put on the microphone. Yeah. So they love that. People just melt over the lower tones. But I always have to tell people that if you're learning, you don't want to pick that lowest tone maybe that you're most drawn to, because you may get discouraged because you can't reach the finger holes. And if you can't cover holes properly on a flute, then you're going to you're going to be hitting a wall right away. But this A minor.
And the lower, the D minor takes more breath too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that shouldn't be an issue. And if you see this flute here, this is a drone flute. So now you're playing two flutes at once. That's going to take double the amount of breath to play. I also make triple flutes. It's amazing what you can do. But then you're getting to the point where you're really losing a lot of breath. I wouldn't say that my low D flutes is going to cause a problem as far as, running out of
breath
air.
Control or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think so. But okay. But so here's the A, and this. I mean, maybe we're going to do a little jam with this, aren't we? So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, actually,
it's gorgeous.
and I like that. A lot of people, they say that they're drawn to the lower tones. I'm lucky. I'm a flute maker, so I can play. Like if I perform, I bring all the keys.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And that's how I make a performance diverse. And that's one thing regarding to the question that was asked is, yes, both your instruments and my instruments are key specific. So there's limited scales you can play with a pan. As we were discussing before, C major would work with your pan, A minor would work with your pan, the D minor, but then there's also high D. And the other thing too is that, as you know, because Dave, you have in your career made, how many different Ds, the earth scale, the sunset scale, the dark earth scale, and they're all just a few notes apart. And so this is a high D I made specifically for myself for this performance. I think I'm going to keep it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But this is an Aeolian minor. This is a little different than
Hey guys, I have a question real quick.
Flute.
I have a question real quick from Sheridan.
Sure.
And I'm going to put it on the screen real quick. And Sheridan is asking, what about being in tune with each other and the challenges with intonation?
Okay. How about you talk about
let me answer that as much as I can real quick. Handpans are typically tuned to A440, which just basically means it's a specific pitch all the way up and down the instrument, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's in a way of tuning where it should work with like a piano or a guitar or any other instrument should be able to play along with it effectively. Sometimes on handpans, handpan tuners will tune them to A432, which lowers the pitch slightly. So if you were to play with an A432 instrument, like a typical flute that Miguel makes is probably typically A440, right, Miguel?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, and so those wouldn't match. I know from personal experience playing my native flutes at home, what do they call that little thing that's on top next to the hole?
Oh yeah, the totem. Sometimes it's called the
totem.
Block, but yeah.
I recall at least once where that totem was shifted upwards or backwards a little bit, and it changed the pitch a little bit.
Just a hair.
Do you have
just a hair?
Okay.
It's not. It typically makes it either clearer or maybe a little airier, breathier, or harder overblow. So that's in one way it changes the pitch in the sense that if it's pushed too far forward, you have to really blow gently without it overblowing. So if you're blowing gently on the flute, it's going to be flatter, harder on the flute, sharper. And so that's one thing about wooden flutes is that because they're wood, which is different than handpans, they actually can vary in pitch due to the temperature in the room. And so I have to be very mindful. And when I tune to 440, and so if people, I would refer back to the question and say, it's really the responsibility of the maker. So if you have a handpan and or a flute first, and you want to purchase the other, reach out to the maker or the seller and double, triple check that it is in 440 pitch and that it will play, in tune with, because that's the responsibility of the maker. And there's many makers out there. It's really good to double check, especially in the Native American flute world, because there's many makers, and the quality, experience, and the tradition may, that it's not necessarily traditional Native American to care to tune it to 440. So you really want to check on that if it's important to you. It's important to me because I play accompaniment, and to me that's the beauty. So
yeah, it's interesting you talk about the air. I used the temperature of the air. I used to be a marching band director for a little while at high school. And on a cold night, a cold, moist night at a football game or whatever, I think the brass instruments went sharp and the woodwinds went flat. Which one is it? Do they go flat?
The woodwinds go flat and cold, yeah.
All right, guys,
flat, right?
Got another question real quick. Hopefully that answered the question for Sheridan. And we have another question from Shar. And it says, do handpans need retuning?
Oh, yeah. So occasionally a handpan will need retuning. It's made of metal. Metal gets hot and gets cold. And when it gets hot and cold, it stretches, expands and contracts. So over time, if you get it in hot environments, cold environments, even if it's just sitting in a closet for a year, it might slightly go out of tune. Frequently, it's imperceptible. You can't really hear it unless it's quite a bit out of tune. So usually people only notice it after something gets damaged. Somebody brings it in and says, hey, this note here got hit by whatever, a tree branch. And so they'll bring it to me. And then at that point, I look at everything and I go, oh, not just that one note was out of tune. These other notes were out of tune too. So one of my favorite stories to talk about with tuning in regard to how frequently it needs to get tuned is I always tell the story about the piano, the classic family piano. Some people will play that family piano for 25 years and never get it tuned once, and they're just as happy as can be. And then other people, like a professional piano player, they might want to get it tuned every month or two because there's that one note that's kind of fluctuating and having a little problem with it. So it ends up being kind of a personal experience of like whether you need to get it tuned and how you're hearing it. There's all sorts of different ways of making handpans, and every handpan maker makes them and tunes them slightly differently.
Yeah.
So with that being said, there could be a variety of reasons you want to get it tuned. And so it's hard to say, but the way I know if they're in tune or out of tune is I put it on a strobo tuner, and I can see graphically on the screen whether the octaves or the fundamentals are sharp or flat.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Well,
no more questions.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually add a little to that and just say that as a handpan collector, seller, reseller, and lover, that was the greatest blessings of running into you, Dave, is that you're local. And, when you're considering, I'm going to invest a lot of money into this handpan, and then maybe in a year or two, I might want to get it retuned. Well, what if you got that from Europe? What if you got that from Switzerland? You have to pay that shipping. It's a couple, $200, $300, sometimes $100 both ways. And they can get shook up in shipping. And that's one of the reasons why I was so grateful to find you, because we're only going a few miles as compared to getting shipped from Switzerland or somewhere else.
Right.
And all of that travel, depending on how people are packaging and et cetera, they can be out of tune by the time they arrive. And then what do you do?
Yeah.
We have some
Then you
more
gotta
great
update it.
questions, you
Difficult
guys.
situation.
We got another great question here from
Yeah.
Peter Labara. Question both Dave and Miguel: are handpans and native flutes temperament tuned, or is each note tuned to a standard? And I think you were just talking about that, maybe, Peter.
Talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
In general, we both, Miguel and I, tune our instruments typically to A440.
Mm-hmm.
If you
I
look
don't
it
know.
up, you could Google it, like A440,
Right.
and you'll learn all about A440 and what it means.
Right. I don't know what temperament tuned necessarily means, but I will say that the tuning process for a flute is much, much simpler than a steel drum, in the sense that when I can just take a chromatic tuner and just turn it on. I can even use an app on my phone to do that. And I just have to read the specific note that I'm tuning to. There's an order, there's a way that it has to be done, but I'm not tuning harmonics. I'm not tuning high octave notes, this and that, so it all rings true. It's different with a woodwind instrument. So, once you know the spacing and the scale and where the placement of the holes, it's relatively, the tuning process is relatively simple, as far as you blow into the flute with the right breath pressure and you read the note. And referring to even the first question too, this relates to that, is that I personally tune my flutes a little sharp of 440. And so the reason why is because in Oregon and most places, when you first pick up the flute, it's going to be a little cold and it will warm up as you perform. And if it's perfect pitch, that beginning of that song is going to be a little flat. And what I've noticed is if it's a little flat, it's really off to me, even a hair flat.
Yeah.
If it's a little sharp, it kind of dances over the melody and you don't even notice.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to make a wooden flute sound good by holding a little back, blowing a little softer on the flute to let it be more in pitch, than blowing so hard that it's windy. And because that's how I am. My ear knows when it's flat. So if it's a little chilly, I'm pretty much wailing on the flute when I'm playing it. This winter, or last September, I went to Orcas Island for a festival, and we had a performance that we did, a sound healing performance. And I've learned enough. I mean, it is cold. It was raining. I was under a tarp. I mean, and so I actually brought, because there's electricity there, I brought this small electric blanket, and I kept my flutes warm. You could do that with a heating pad or a blanket and actually keep them warm, because if it's 40 degrees out, 45 degrees out, it's going to be flat. So you really have to know that. So that's why I tune a hair sharp, because you can always relax on your breath and make it perfect pitch, rather than having to wail on the flute if it's a little cold.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you say you and I do like a little call and response?
Yeah,
trade-off
real
with the
quick,
A minor native flute?
Dave, really quick.
Yes, sir.
There is one more question, and that is, how does one find a qualified person to tune it? And it being, I think, handpans. Is there tuning for flutes? I don't know.
Well, it's the same. It's typically the maker, regardless of the instrument. You just have to make sure that the maker has that experience, or that's part of their product to tune in pitch. You typically wouldn't buy a flute and then go find somebody to tune it. You would, but with flutes and handpans, I know, because I've done it. People will send me other people's flutes, and then from that point, I can do the best I can to get that in tune. And I most often succeed. There's certain sound quality things, same with handpans, that I can't go back and fix. But generally speaking, I can improve the sound quality or get it more in pitch just by, reading it, seeing if it's flat or sharp. Sharp's a little harder to get back flat, but there's ways to do it. So
Yeah, in regard to handpans, it can be a touchy subject because whoever made the instrument sometimes can want to tune it perpetually. They don't want anybody else to tune it.
right.
And so you should always check with the person who made the instrument first, if you know who that person is. For instance, I had a customer that was in France, and she had some damage happen to her handpan. And like Miguel said earlier, you don't want to ship it back and forth from France. The shipping cost is huge. So I found a reputable tuner that I already knew in Belgium. So I told her to contact that tuner. And that was a way that she was able to find a tuner that she could trust. In general, yeah, it can be a little bit touchy subject because even if I get a handpan that was made by somebody else, which I frequently do, I frequently get handpans that are made by a lot of people, frequently unknown makers too. And you don't always know how that person made that instrument, like what kind of hammers they used, what kind of stroke they used to hit the drum, and all the mechanics that are involved with it. So it can be a little struggle, especially if somebody's like a new tuner that has not experienced other people's tuning methods before. They can end up making it worse. So just always if you can, check with the person that made it in the first place. And if you can't send it to them, find out if they have a reference or a referral. Otherwise, just probably find the person on YouTube that has a lot of videos of them tuning instruments that aren't made by them. That might be a good way of doing
Subscribe,
Yeah.
like, and comment.
Yeah.
it.
Cool, guys. Keep the questions coming. I think we want to hear you guys play. Is that what you guys were going to do?
Yeah.
Let's hear
Yeah,
some
go.
flute.
So, Miguel, I just want to let you know. So, I enjoy playing the D minor stuff, but when you and I rehearse this song, it's not even really a song. It's just we're just trading off. He plays something and I play something. This is really one of my favorite little things we did.
Me too.
So
Me
hopefully
too.
we can make it happen like we did in practice.
Yeah, and hopefully our subscribers too will be able to see the video, because that first that first little run through that we did, we recorded that. Or no,
that's right.
remember? You sent me a track, and then I did a track over that, recorded that, and Daniel, I think, put it together for us already.
Yeah, we have those videos. They will be available after the video if you subscribe, comment, like to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and that's
cool.
That's worth checking out too, because that's got your tongue drum on that one, and that's really,
that's
really
right.
neat
Yeah.
too. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, man. So just for the audience, so you guys all know, we're playing the handpan, which is a D minor instrument, but you can play A minor on this instrument, and he's got his A minor flute there.
Go ahead, Dave.
Woo!
Yeah, that
All right,
sounds
thanks,
so good.
Miguel.
Thank you.
So much fun playing with you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I know we've made a talk a couple of times about me going down to LA and being able to do a workshop, and maybe when things normalize again, we can make that happen. Go do it in person. Yeah.
Yep, gotta make it happen.
Gotta
Well,
make
actually,
it happen.
Daniel and I would love to come up to Portland too. So
Hey, that's great.
Oh yeah,
That's great.
We need some forest shots with the handpan, then do flute. And,
That's
oh
right.
my God, it'd be so awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have looked too much at my Instagram posts, but I got involved in, well, backing up a bit. My daughter, I think I had mentioned earlier that when I was raising my kids, I didn't play much music. I remember when my daughter Kiara, she was in the belly. I made that decision that, it's probably not a good idea to, rehearse 3 times a week and get paid, free drink tickets or $50 a month or something in a performance and spending all that time. And I just decided to step back and just focus on flute making. And it went, other than just like doing a wedding here or there or just random performances, and actually got my kids involved in a drum and fire dance troupe in Colorado for a while. But as far as in a band, actual performances, my kid turned 17. She's driving, taking care of herself. She doesn't need me at all. And I decided, hey, there's a little bit of room.
Dave's
and so
got a
we
couple,
started this.
We got a 17-year-old too.
Yeah, but we started this healing music group, and we call it AHME, AHME, which stands for a healing music experience. That story was awesome too, because I mean, I don't want to get too down the spiritual wormhole, but I'm always big into like going with the flow and trusting with your intuition, and that I guess I'll use the word spirit. Spirit brings you to where you're supposed to be to lead you to the next beautiful thing that's going to make your life what it's supposed to be, right? And
yep.
And when I said to myself, man, I'm going to start playing music again, it just snowballed into these connections with people. And actually, 2 years ago or 2 summers ago, maybe it was only one, this guy, David Hoover, he is the guy who I met in New Mexico who gave me my first flute. And we're at the Oregon Country Fair because I've been there. And I'm a relatively, sober guy. I'm not like a partier guy. So what fills me up is playing music with other people when I go to these festivals.
Nice.
So it's midnight, and there's this place called Altered Space where people go and play music at nighttime. And I go there. It's pitch dark. There's this guy. I brought the handpan actually, and flutes and a didgeridoo. And there's this guy playing a harp. And we locked into some beautiful rhythms, and we couldn't even see each other. And then we introduced each other, and we look into each other's eyes. And I'm like, and he said, I'm Dave. His name's Dave too. It took him twice to introduce himself. And the second time he said Dave, I'm like, Dave? Did you ever live in New Mexico? And he was the man who gave me my first flute in New Mexico that got me started on this flute journey. Now here we are in Oregon. Well, so that, and then a similar story with my friend Jason, who ended up at my house after Dead or Fish tour or something at my parents' house when I was 20 years old, and I still live there. And funny memories and stories. And we're now in a healing music band called AHME.
Yeah.
And
hey, Miguel.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me cut you off real quick. I got a battery warning on my phone.
All right.
Oh no.
All right, hold on a second. We have a real quick question from Peter Labara. Here we go. And dun dun dun. You sort of touched on it, but this is a great question actually, guys. But could you expand on beginner level or what you would recommend for your first handpan or first native flute? So this is for both of you guys.
Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Well, we primarily sell the D minor sunset scale, and we have found that numerous customers just love it. And so it's one of our primary instruments that we sell. So D minor, we love D minor.
Yeah. And so for me, it's pretty great that I get to demonstrate it now. The flute that we just played, this is one that you can find all over the internet, and it's but at my website, Singing Tree Flutes. This is an A minor, what I call no frills flute. Just means it's super simple, keeps the cost down, and this is the lowest cost range. But as you can hear, the sound quality is there, and this is a perfect size and key for a beginner because it's great for accompaniment and it's great. It's still got that beautiful meditative tone, but it's small enough that you can handle for your finger reach.
Wow, nice. Man, maybe we should do like a collab package deal.
I would love
the
to do
beginner
that.
flute
Totally
with a good handpan. I don't know. I'll pose that question out to you guys out there if you guys think that's a good idea.
Absolutely. So. How many minutes do you think you got on that battery?
Yeah, how many?
I don't know, man. It said 10%.
10%?
So I don't know.
Oh my God.
It was like 5 minutes ago.
Uh-oh.
So why don't we just say thank you to the audience for tuning in today.
For showing up. Yeah.
And let's maybe play our D minor jam.
Yeah.
And just have a good time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this too. This is going to sound a little different. This is a high D. Made this specifically so I can show this one. And this one is in Aeolian minor. That's one of the things I specialize in is tunings other than the standard Native American tuning as well. This is an Aeolian.
Nice.
It's still a minor. It plays with the handpan, but it'll have a different flavor than the other two you heard. So thanks again.
All right, Miguel.
To see you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's play this thing. Let's do it.
Okay. Yes. Oh my God, you guys sound so good. Oh my God. Oh my God, I can't stand
Thanks.
I can't stand
What you can do with computers. It's crazy.
No, it's so awesome. I feel so good for the
All right, team.
Whoa. Would a custom Luna... Wait, here comes a question real quick. Would a custom Luna satin handpan in this A minor scale be a possibility? Ooh. That might be a question for an email action if you email us, Ari, but I can pose the question right now.
What was it again?
Would a custom Luna satin handpan in this A minor scale be a possibility? And he has the E as the ding, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B. That's actually one.
Almost. The only note on that scale that he listed is the B wouldn't work, unless we did it on an Aris.
That's kind of funny. I got one of those. Isn't the E accabono basically the A minor that he's asking for?
Basically, yeah.
Because
you're right. It has A, B, C. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have one for sale? That's the question.
I do have one.
Right.
There it is. There it is, Ari. There it is.
No,
give Miguel a call.
Because if I sell it, I'm buying one from Dave. So it is what it is.
All right. I guess you got to. Hopefully that was a good. Yeah, they can battle it out. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ari, for the question. All right, guys, that was awesome. Last parting words, I guess, and we are out before Dave runs out.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, Miguel, after we just played those tunes and had a good time there, you're right. We definitely need to meet up and do a live performance, and I foresee a coffee shop in our future.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ari's asking Miguel. Ari's asking, how do you how can we? Oh, we got the email. All right, cool. He said, Carrie's got it. Carrie's got it.
Say that it's for me, the blessing of this type of job and for meeting you is that not only is it important to me to have high quality instruments, but high quality people. And I know that you're a kind, humble, generous man, and I really appreciate who you are, and I'm glad that we've met.
And you too, Miguel. It is. Sometimes it's hard to find people that are honest and true to their word. So you're amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice, guys.
All right, you want to just play while Daniel cues us
Yeah. I guess we need, especially this weekend. There's a lot of craziness going on, so we
good point.
We need to put some good frequencies out into the world, and let's finish off till. Ooh, look at that flute! That's so awesome.
The little eagle flute.
The eagle flute. That's so amazing. Holy crap! So we'll leave you guys with some good sounds. I'll let them play for a little while, and then you guys have a fantastic day. Take this energy and let it flow with you throughout the day. Have a good one, guys.